She begged the human for aid. Her next words broke his heart. Elias Ward leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars beyond the reinforced glass of the outpost. The distant pinpricks of light reminded him of Earth in a way that made his chest tighten. Here, at the edge of known space, humans were few and far between, and he often wondered why anyone had chosen to place a human alone on this tiny, lonely relay station. His work was simple: observe, report, and ensure the communications relay ran smoothly. Humans were valued for their problem-solving skills, their adaptability, and the strange, unquantifiable ability to inspire emotion. But he never expected to witness something that would challenge the very foundation of that belief. It began with a quiet alarm, one he almost ignored, thinking it was a routine check-in. But the sensor readings were unusual, a life form approaching at high speed, cloaked and unannounced. A single craft, fragile-looking against the black void, moved toward the outpost. Elias felt a tension coil in his stomach. Most species would have issued warnings, contacted the conquered, or ignored him entirely. This was different. The craft landed with a soft hum, almost tender, and the hatch opened slowly. He stepped outside, expecting a dignitary, a trader, or perhaps a scout. Instead, a figure stepped out, staggering, their tall, elegant frame seeming almost too fragile for the long, steady march of time that defined their species. The alien raised a hand in a shaky greeting, but the moment their eyes met Elias, the grace vanished. She fell to her knees. Elias froze. No being had ever knelt to a human. The very thought seemed impossible. Humans were considered clever, yes, but weak, fleeting, emotional. The aliens he had interacted with carried centuries in their eyes, and they rarely bent to the desires of one short-lived creature. Yet here she was, trembling, a mixture of exhaustion and fear etched into every line of her face. "Please," she said, voice breaking. "Please help us." Elias' mind raced. His first instinct was to call the conquered for instructions, but something in the way she spoke, a raw, desperate honesty, made him pause. He stepped closer, careful not to startle her further. Who are you?" he asked softly. "I am Sarai," she whispered. "I come from the Luminari, but there is no time." Her voice trembled with urgency. "We are dying, and you are the only ones who can understand." Elias' heart caught. Dying, that could mean disease, war, or environmental collapse. He had prepared for emergencies, yes, but nothing had ever prepared him for the idea that an entire species could reach out to him personally for aid. I don't understand," he admitted, stepping closer. "Tell me, how can I help?" Sarai's eyes, deep and shimmering like liquid silver, filled with tears. "Not help in the way you think," she said. "We do not ask for your weapons or your fleets or your science. We ask for you." Elias blinked, confusion tightening his chest. "Me? Yes." "Humanity," her voice cracked. "Your lives, your emotions, your mistakes. We have forgotten what it means to care, to hope, to live with uncertainty. Our time has made us hollow. We are ending our own lives, choosing perfection over love, safety over emotion. But before we vanish, we wish to remember what it feels like to live, truly to feel." Elias took a step back, his mind spinning. He had read reports of the Luminari, a species known for their intelligence, their near immortality, and their calm detachment. They were proud, rarely emotional, rarely desperate. And here was one of them, begging a human for presence, for humanity itself. He swallowed hard, realizing that she was not asking for survival in the usual sense. She was asking for a gift that could not be quantified, the simple, messy, fleeting beauty of human life. Why me?" he whispered. "Because no one else will understand," she said. Her voice broke as she looked up at him. "Your kind is small, fragile, and yet powerful in ways we cannot calculate. You feel, you hurt, you love, you fail, you hope, you die. We have forgotten all of that. And now we wish to see it again. Please come to us, live with us. Teach us to feel before it is too late." Elias felt a weight in his chest. She was not asking him to save her people from extinction. She was asking him to remind them why life mattered. He swallowed, unsure if he had the words to answer. His training urged caution. The Conquered's rules were clear. Humans were observers, not interveners. Yet in front of him knelt a being whose species had abandoned hope, whose lives were mathematically ending. He could not walk away. I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, voice shaking. "We're humans. We're short-lived, weak. Why would you think we could help?" Sarai smiled faintly, a shimmer of sadness in her eyes. "Because you can teach us what we lost. Even a single lifetime of human emotion is enough." One life fully lived can remind an entire species why it matters to exist. Please, Elias, you are our last chance, not to survive, but to feel again. Elias felt a tug at his heart he had never known before. He had spent years in the cold expanse of space, dealing with numbers, signals, and mechanical failures. But here was a being who trusted him, who trusted humanity with the most precious thing she had, her species' last hope for understanding emotion. I need to send a message first, he said finally, turning back to his console. The conquered would need to know. They would question him, perhaps forbid him, perhaps punish him for this reckless act. But he could not ignore her plea. As he typed, Sarai remained on her knees, watching him with hope and exhaustion intertwined. She seemed smaller, more fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in her persistence that humbled him. When he finished sending the transmission, he turned back to her. I've sent the request. Earth, they will have to decide, but I promise I will stay with you until then. Her relief was almost tangible. She rose, her movements slow and careful, and extended a hand to him, not in command, not in diplomacy, but in trust. Elias took it, feeling the faint warmth of her skin, the pulse of life that carried centuries of history and the weight of a species' final hope. Days passed. The transmission returned with a cautious, delayed approval. Humans would be allowed to travel, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as witnesses, as teachers, as companions. A small delegation would join him, leaving Earth behind to live among the Luminari. Elias prepared for the journey, gathering supplies, reviewing protocols, and packing not just tools but pieces of his own humanity. Music, stories, laughter, and tears. When the humans finally arrived, the Luminari watched with a mixture of disbelief and awe. They had never seen beings so fragile yet so determined, so short-lived yet so insistent on living fully. Elias led them to Sarai, who knelt once more, not in despair but in reverence, acknowledging the gift of their presence. Life among the Luminari began slowly. Humans taught them to laugh at the absurd, to cry at loss, to celebrate the fleeting moments that once seemed meaningless. They showed them grief, yes, but also hope. Pain, but also joy. Uncertainty, but also courage. The Luminari listened, observed, and began to remember emotions they thought were lost forever. Elias found himself exhausted, challenged, and inspired in ways he had never imagined. Every day brought lessons in patience, empathy, and the strange, beautiful complexity of living beings who are aware of their own limits. He learned that heroism was not in strength or weaponry, but in the willingness to feel, to endure, to give oneself fully to others. Yet even as the days unfolded, there was a quiet sadness that lingered, a reminder that human lifespans were short. That time was always slipping through their fingers. Sarai watched him age slightly, her expression thoughtful and distant. She understood the cost, but she also understood the gift. She was witnessing something rare, humans teaching a species to care again, even if it meant suffering, even if it meant heartbreak. Elias knew that when the day came for him to leave, or when time claimed him as it would inevitably do, he would leave more than knowledge behind. He would leave a legacy of feeling, a spark of life that could not be measured, calculated, or controlled. He would leave hope. And Sarai, kneeling once more under the twin moons of her homeworld, would remember what it felt like to be alive. As night fell, and the humans sat around a small fire, telling stories, laughing, and sometimes crying together, Elias realized something profound. Humanity's strength was never in the tools they wielded or the worlds they conquered. It was in their capacity to care, to hope, to live fully despite knowing the fragility of life. And in this moment, surrounded by a species that had long forgotten these truths, he understood that sometimes being human was the greatest power of all. The days stretched into weeks, and the humans settled into the Luminari city with quiet determination. Elias watched them move among the tall, elegant towers and wide crystal plazas, teaching, laughing, and sharing their short but meaningful lives. The Luminari observed, at first cautiously, then with growing curiosity. For centuries, their people had perfected everything, thought, science, art. But in that perfection, they had lost the ability to truly feel. Now, humans were showing them what they had forgotten. Sarai often followed Elias, walking alongside him as he explained the simplest things. Why humans smiled when happy, why they cried at small losses, and why they sometimes acted without reason, guided only by emotion. "It is strange," she said one evening as they watched the sun cast golden light across the city. To see you care about such small things. We measure everything, calculate everything, and yet, you find meaning in moments that mean nothing by our standards. That is the point, Elias said softly. Meaning isn't always in the big things. Sometimes it's in a touch, a word, or a song. That's how we survive, by feeling, by connecting, even when it hurts. Sarai nodded, her long fingers brushing the smooth surface of the plaza railing. We have been blind for so long, she whispered. I did not believe it could be this simple, and yet it changes everything. The humans began to live among the Luminari as they would on Earth. Children ran through crystal corridors, laughing, their voices echoing against walls that had only known silence. Elders taught music, painting, and dance, filling the Luminari world with movement and sound that had been absent for centuries. Elias found himself sitting with a small group of Luminari every evening, telling stories of Earth, of human victories, failures, and simple joys. At first, some Luminari resisted. They could not understand why humans risked so much for short lives, for fragile bonds, for fleeting happiness. But as they watched the humans care for one another, laugh at absurd mistakes, and face fear without certainty, they began to change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, color returned to their cheeks. Tears, once rare and practiced, fell freely. Smiles, hesitant at first, became genuine. Sarai herself felt it most deeply. She watched a human child trip over a stone in the plaza and burst into laughter, the child's face bright with joy. Something in her chest tightened, a warmth she had not felt for centuries. She realized she missed the uncertainty, the risk, the hope, and the pain of life itself. They are alive, she said quietly to Elias, and they are teaching us to live again. Elias smiled, though his heart ached at the knowledge of his fleeting time. That is the gift of being human, he said. We are not perfect, but we are alive. We fail, we hurt, we love. And we never stop trying, even when we know the end is coming. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Sarai led Elias to a quiet garden, one of the few places untouched by human activity. The garden was still beautiful, but the flowers were muted, the water in the fountains almost still. We have lived too long in safety, she said softly. We forget how to fear, how to hope. You have brought life back to us, but I see now, you also remind us of what we have lost. Elias nodded, understanding her meaning. The humans' short lives were a mirror to the Luminari's long ones. In their brief existence, they experienced the full spectrum of life, from joy to sorrow, from wonder to despair. The Luminari, for all their longevity, had forgotten that the value of life lay not in its length or perfection, but in its depth and intensity. Days turned into months. Humans lived, laughed, cried, and taught. Some Luminari began to take human names, to adopt human customs, to feel emotion as humans did. Music filled the towers, dances filled the plazas, and for the first time in centuries, the city was alive with energy. Elias grew older, his hair graying, his body tiring from the short human lifespan. Each day he felt the weight of mortality, a constant reminder that his time was limited. But he also felt joy, the kind of joy that came from knowing he had made a difference. He held the hands of children as they learned to sing, comforted elders as they remembered emotions long forgotten, and watched adults laugh at simple mistakes. Each moment was precious, and he cherished them all. Sarai observed him closely, noticing the changes in his face, the way his movements slowed, the way his eyes sometimes lingered on distant stars. She realized that humans, in their brief lives, gave everything they had, and the Luminari began to understand what it meant to sacrifice for love, not for duty or perfection. One day, a small group of Luminari approached Elias and Sarai with an unusual request. We wish to remember, one of them said, voice trembling. We wish to choose life not because it is calculated, but because it matters. Teach us how to live as humans do. Elias felt a lump in his throat. This was the moment he had hoped for, the moment when the Luminari truly began to feel again. It is simple, he said, smiling. Live fully, care deeply, love without certainty, embrace pain and joy alike. That is the way humans survive, and that is the way you will, too. Sarai's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope, not sorrow. We will try, she whispered. We will remember, and we will live because you have shown us how. As the months passed, the Luminari embraced human ways more fully. They laughed at mistakes, comforted one another in sorrow, and celebrated fleeting victories. Children learned to cry and forgive, adults learned to fear and hope, elders learned to take risks for love. The city, once silent and cold, was now filled with warmth, sound, and light. Ilias felt proud, but also painfully aware of his own limits. He knew he would not live to see the full transformation of the Luminari, but he took comfort in knowing that he had planted a seed that would grow long after he was gone. Every smile, every tear, every laugh was a testament to the human spirit, a spirit that refused to be measured by strength or longevity, but only by the depth of feeling it could inspire. One evening, as he watched a group of Luminari children play under the twin moons, Sarai approached him. "You have given us everything we could not find on our own," she said softly. "You have reminded us that life is not perfect, that it is messy, fleeting, and painful, but that is what makes it worth living." Ilias smiled, feeling the weight of exhaustion and fulfillment settle over him. "That is what it means to be human," he said. "We do not live forever, but we live fully. And if we can teach even one species to feel again, then we have done something meaningful." The night air was filled with the sound of laughter, music, and the soft murmur of conversations. The humans and Luminari sat together, sharing stories, learning from one another, and celebrating life in its imperfect beauty. Ilias felt a deep sense of peace. For the first time in centuries, the Luminari truly understood what it meant to live, and humans had shown them the way. As the first light of dawn touched the city, Ilias realized that humanity's greatest power was not strength, not intellect, and not technology. It was the ability to inspire, to feel, to care deeply and fully. In the presence of humans, a proud and ancient species had begun to remember how to be alive. And that, he knew, was the most extraordinary achievement of all. Sarai knelt beside him once more, not in despair, but in reverence. "You have changed us forever," she said. "We will not forget. Your lives, short as they may be, have given us more than centuries of perfection ever could." Ilias took her hand gently. "And you have given us something in return," he said. "You have reminded us that even the smallest life, the briefest existence, can leave a mark that lasts forever." Together they watched the sunrise, a symbol of new beginnings, a world reborn through the simple, profound truth of human emotion. The Luminari would live differently now, not longer or better, but fully as humans did, embracing joy, sorrow, and love with open hearts. And Ilias knew that, even in his final days, he had left something eternal behind. The memory of humanity and the hope that life, in all its fragile, fleeting beauty, was always worth living. And so, on the edge of known space, under alien skies, humanity's legacy endured, not in power or conquest, but in the ability to feel, to care, and to inspire life itself. Years passed, and the humans who had arrived to the Luminari world began to settle into life as fully as they could. Children grew up laughing under alien suns, learning stories of both Earth and Luminari history, blending them in a harmony that no one had imagined possible. Humans were fragile, their bodies aging faster than the tall, enduring Luminari, but every moment of their lives carried weight. Each smile, each tear, each fleeting laugh was a spark that lit a fire in a species that had once been cold with perfection. Ilias had grown older, his hair streaked with gray and his hands trembling slightly from years of hard work. Yet every day he rose with purpose, knowing that his brief existence could inspire centuries for others. The Luminari had begun to embrace the lessons humans brought: joy, sorrow, love, pain, hope, and their world was transformed. Gardens bloomed in wild abandon, laughter echoed through the crystal towers, and music filled spaces that had once known only silence. Sarai remained by Ilias' side, watching him with an admiration that grew each day. She could feel the weight of his short human life, and yet he never complained. Every action, every lesson, was given freely, and the Luminari slowly began to understand that living fully was more important than living perfectly. They began to take risks, to make choices guided by emotion rather than calculation, and the city began to hum with life in ways it had not known for millennia. One afternoon, Ilias found himself in the great library of the city, surrounded by Luminari children who had begun to read and write in human ways. They asked questions about Earth, about human families, about the joy of small achievements and the sadness of loss. He smiled at their curiosity, feeling the familiar ache of time pressing against him, but also a deep satisfaction. Humans might be short-lived, but the lessons they left behind were eternal. Sarai joined him, leaning against the polished surface of a reading table. "You have given us a gift we cannot repay," she said softly. Your lives are brief, yet you have changed everything. I never thought it would be possible. Elias shook his head gently. I did not change you. You did this yourselves. We only reminded you of what you had forgotten. Life is not about living forever. It is about living fully. The humans continued to teach, and with every lesson the Luminari grew bolder. They laughed more freely, took chances they had long avoided, and learned to care not only for themselves but for one another. Old rituals of detachment were replaced with songs of joy, dances of celebration, and ceremonies of memory. Even the elders, who had once believed emotion to be a weakness, began to embrace it, finding that it made life richer and more meaningful. Elias often found himself walking with Sarai beneath the twin moons, observing how the humans and Luminari interacted. He noticed small gestures that carried enormous weight. A child comforting a grieving Luminari, a human holding the hand of a frightened adult, a song sung in harmony across species. Each moment was a testament to the enduring power of humanity's greatest gift, the ability to care, to connect, to inspire. One evening, as the city glowed under the soft light of twin moons, Sarai spoke with Elias in a quiet, thoughtful voice. Do you ever regret coming here? She asked. Elias paused, looking at the stars beyond the city. No, he said finally. There are moments I wish I had more time, more strength, but I do not regret coming. Humans are not long-lived, but we are alive, and that is enough. Enough to change a world, enough to remind a species how to feel, enough to leave something eternal behind. Sarai smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. You have changed more than our world. You have changed our hearts, our minds, our very understanding of what it means to live. I did not believe it was possible, but you have shown me the truth. As the months turned into years, the human presence continued to ripple through Luminari society. Music became a constant companion, laughter a common sound, and acts of kindness spread like fire. The Luminari no longer feared emotion, they embraced it. They wept at losses, celebrated victories, and loved without hesitation. Children learned to cry and forgive, adults learned to risk and hope, and elders rediscovered the joy of uncertainty. Elias grew weaker with each passing season, his short human life reminding him constantly of mortality. Yet he never faltered. He taught, laughed, comforted, and shared stories until the very last day he could. Even as his body grew frail, his spirit remained strong, a testament to the resilience of humanity. Sarai watched him closely, understanding that his time was limited. She felt the ache of impending loss, but also a deep gratitude for the gift he had given her species. Humans, she realized, were dangerous not because of strength or intellect, but because of the power of feeling. They reminded the Luminari that life was meant to be lived fully, that joy and sorrow were intertwined, and that even the briefest life could leave an impact that lasted forever. One morning, Elias called the humans and Luminari together in the central plaza. His voice, though weaker than before, carried the weight of purpose. We have lived together, laughed together, and learned from one another. I may not live to see the full future you create, but I know that you have remembered what it means to be alive. Never forget that life is not measured in time or perfection, but in depth, in courage, and in love. Tears shimmered in the eyes of humans and Luminari alike. Children clung to their teachers, adults held hands, and elders nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Elias smiled, feeling the warmth of connection and the power of shared experience. He knew that when his time came, he would leave behind something eternal, the memory of humanity, the proof that a short life could inspire change beyond imagination. As the sun set and the twin moons rose, Elias felt his strength fade. He sat quietly, Sarai at his side, holding his hand gently. You have given us hope, she whispered. We will carry it forward. I know, he said softly. Remember to live fully, to care, to feel. That is the greatest gift you can give to yourselves and to the future. And then, with a final, gentle smile, Elias closed his eyes, his human life ending quietly under alien skies. Around him, the humans and Luminari bowed their heads, not in sorrow alone, but in gratitude for the brief life that had left an eternal mark. Life did not stop. The Luminari continued to learn from humans, carrying forward the lessons of joy, sorrow, hope, and love. Children laughed, adults embraced uncertainty, and elders shared stories with warmth and tenderness. Music filled the city, and celebrations of life became a constant presence. The world had changed, not through conquest or calculation, but through connection, empathy, and the enduring power of human spirit. Sarai often walked through the city, watching new generations of humans and Luminari grow together. She felt a quiet pride in how far they had come and a deep respect for the fragility and strength of human life. "They teach us," she would say, "not with power, not with perfection, but with their hearts. That is the greatest strength any being can have." Years later, long after the humans had returned to Earth or passed from their short lives, the Luminari continued to live differently. They embraced risk, joy, and sorrow. They loved without fear and celebrated life in all its imperfection. The city, once cold and still, was alive with energy, laughter, and the warmth of emotion. Sarai, now among the elders, often spoke to young Luminari about humans. She told stories of Elias and the others who had come from afar, who had shared their brief but extraordinary lives, who had reminded her species of what it meant to feel. She taught the lessons of empathy, hope, and courage, ensuring that humanity's legacy endured long after their physical presence had faded. And somewhere, beneath the twin moons, the memory of Elias smiled upon the city he had helped transform. His life, brief yet powerful, had reminded an ancient species that even the smallest and shortest-lived among them could leave an impact that lasted forever. The Luminari no longer feared imperfection. They no longer measured life solely by longevity or success. They lived fully, loved deeply, and embraced the fleeting beauty of existence. And in doing so, they carried forward the greatest lesson humanity had ever given them. That life, in all its fragility and wonder, was worth living with an open heart. The stars beyond the city shone as they had always done, but now the light reflected from countless hearts, human and Luminari alike, filled with hope, connection, and understanding. Humanity had arrived at the edge of known space and left behind a legacy far greater than conquest, wealth, or power. They left the gift of feeling. And that gift, in turn, changed the universe forever. Time continued its slow march, and the world that Elias and the humans had touched changed in ways even the Luminari could not have imagined. The city, once a monument to perfect order and calculated calm, now pulsed with life, sound, and unpredictability. Children ran through the plazas, calling each other by both human and Luminari names, while adults laughed at their own mistakes and sang songs of joy that had not been heard in centuries. The humans who remained were aging, their bodies fragile against the enduring Luminari, yet their spirits burned bright, inspiring everyone around them. Sarai stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching as a human child carefully held the hand of a young Luminari, helping them balance on a stone fountain. The sight brought a warmth to her chest she had never felt before. She had seen her people struggle with joy and sorrow, fear and hope, but now, through the humans, she witnessed a deeper understanding of what life could be. Every small gesture, every shared laugh, every tear shed in comfort and empathy reminded her species of what it had lost and what it could regain. Elias had grown older still, his body weaker with each passing day, yet he refused to slow down. There was so much to teach, so much to share, so many hearts to touch before his short life ended. He walked through the city with deliberate steps, observing the changes that had taken root. The Luminari were no longer cautious observers of life. They were participants. They took risks, showed kindness, and embraced the messiness of emotion. They had begun to understand that true strength lay not in perfection or longevity, but in the courage to feel, to connect, and to care. One afternoon, Elias gathered a small group of humans and Luminari in the central plaza. The sun cast long shadows across the crystalline towers, and the air was filled with the laughter of children playing. "Life is fragile," he said, his voice gentle but steady. "We are all here for a short time, and none of us knows how long we will last. But the value of our lives is not in how long we live or how perfect we are. It is in the moments we share, the love we give, and the courage we show. Never forget that." The Luminari listened, their eyes shining with understanding. For centuries, they had measured existence by precision and control, believing that emotion was a weakness. Now they began to see that it was the source of true power. The humans, with their short lives and imperfect ways, had given them a gift no calculation could provide: the ability to live fully, to feel deeply, and to embrace the unpredictable beauty of life. Sarai approached Elias after the gathering, her long fingers brushing against his arm. "You have changed more than our city," she said softly. "You have changed our hearts, our understanding, and the way we live. I cannot imagine a world without your presence, even though I know your time is limited." Elias smiled faintly, feeling the weight of years pressing on him. "I do not need to live forever," he replied. "I only need to live fully, and I have done that here. You have taught me as much as I have taught you, and together we have created something extraordinary. Remember, it is not the length of life that matters, but its depth." As the years continued, the human influence on the Luminari deepened. Gardens bloomed with colors that had been absent for centuries. Music echoed through the streets, and the city became a living testament to the power of connection and emotion. The Luminari embraced uncertainty, joy, and sorrow, learning to take risks and care deeply for one another. Even the oldest among them found new purpose, discovering the beauty of imperfection and the thrill of living without complete control. Elias spent his days teaching, sharing stories, and helping the Luminari understand the simple, yet profound lessons of humanity. He told them about Earth, about human struggles, triumphs, and failures. He spoke of love, loss, hope, and courage, emphasizing that life was valuable precisely because it was fragile and fleeting. Each story, each lesson left a mark on the Luminari hearts, gradually transforming a species that had once abandoned emotion into one that cherished it. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Elias and Sarai walked through a quiet garden. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the soft sound of water trickling from a fountain provided a gentle rhythm. "Do you ever wonder what will happen when the humans are gone?" Elias asked, his voice tinged with sadness. Sarai nodded. "Yes," she said softly, "but I also know that what you have given us will not disappear. You have shown us how to live fully, to feel deeply, and to embrace life. That will remain with us always." Elias sighed, feeling the familiar ache of mortality. "It is strange," he admitted. "We are so short-lived, yet we can leave something eternal behind." "I only hope I have done enough." Sarai smiled, placing her hand gently on his. "You have done more than enough," she said. "Your life, brief as it may be, has changed our world forever. You have given us hope, courage, and the ability to feel again. That is more than any of us could have hoped for." As the days turned into months, Elias' strength continued to wane. The humans who remained around him supported one another, caring for the elderly, teaching the young, and continuing the work of inspiring the Luminari. The city thrived, filled with laughter, music, and the beauty of lives fully lived. Every human action, every shared emotion, was a spark that lit a fire in a species that had long forgotten how to feel. Elias spent his final days surrounded by humans and Luminari alike. He watched children play, adults embrace one another, and elders smile with newfound understanding. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the lessons of humanity had taken root and that the Luminari would carry them forward. One evening, as the sun set and the twin moons rose, Elias called everyone together one last time. "Life is precious," he said, his voice soft but steady. "We may not live forever, but we can live fully. We can care deeply, love without fear, and embrace every moment. That is the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and to others. Remember it always." The humans and Luminari listened, tears glimmering in their eyes. They understood the truth in his words. The lessons of life, love, and courage were not bound by species or lifespan. They were universal. Elias smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. He knew his time was near, but he also knew that the impact of his life would endure far beyond his own existence. As the night fell, Elias closed his eyes for the last time, surrounded by those who had come to love and respect him. His human life ended quietly, leaving behind a legacy of hope, connection, and the enduring power of feeling. The Luminari and humans mourned his passing, but they also celebrated the extraordinary gift he had given them, the knowledge that even the briefest life could leave a mark that would last forever. In the days that followed, the city continued to thrive. The humans who remained continued to teach, laugh, and share their lives with the Luminari. The children grew, carrying forward the lessons of courage, empathy, and joy. Adults embraced uncertainty, and elders shared wisdom tempered with newfound emotion. Music, laughter, and love filled the city, creating a world that was alive in ways that had been unimaginable before. Sarai often walked through the streets, observing the humans and Luminari together. She smiled as she watched children play, adults embrace, and elders laugh. She knew that Elias' influence would endure, that humanity's lessons would continue to shape the Luminari for generations. The city had become a testament to the power of life, emotion, and connection, a living monument to the enduring strength of humanity. Years later, the Luminari spoke of humans with reverence and admiration. They told stories of Elias and the others who had come from Earth, teaching their people the value of life, the importance of feeling, and the courage to live fully. The lessons of humanity were passed from generation to generation, becoming an inseparable part of Luminari culture. And somewhere, under the twin moons and among the stars, the memory of Elias smiled upon the city he had helped transform. His life, brief and fragile, had changed the course of an entire species. Humanity's greatest gift, the ability to inspire, to feel, and to connect, had endured, proving that even the shortest-lived among us could leave a mark that lasted forever. The stars beyond the city shone as they always had, but now the light reflected from countless hearts, human and Luminari alike, filled with hope, understanding, and the courage to live fully. Life, in all its fragility and wonder, was cherished, celebrated, and remembered. And so, the universe carried forward the legacy of humanity, not through power, conquest, or control, but through the simple, extraordinary act of living, feeling, and inspiring others to do the same. In a world once lost to perfection, laughter, tears, love, and courage returned, and life, in all its beauty, endured. Humanity's presence had proven that even the smallest, briefest lives could ignite a fire that would shine forever.